Fire her or you'll regret it. The voice boomed through the glass walls of our Seattle architecture firm like a crack of thunder. At my drafting table, I glanced up to see Ethan Blackwood, 19 years of spoiled rage jabbing a finger in my direction through the office window. His face was crimson, spit flying as he screamed at his father, who stood behind him with the slumped shoulders of a man who'd lost control of his son long ago. My name is Claire Dawson. I'm 29. For the last 4 years, I've been a senior architectural designer at Blackwood and Associates. I love my job crafting spaces with purpose, buildings meant to last. What I don't love, watching a petulant teenager tear down everything his father built because he can't stand being told. No, Dots. This disaster began last week when Ethan overruled one of my structural recommendations for the Morrison Hotel project. During his summer leadership internship, a glorified term for nepotism, he'd marched into my office and demanded I altered the foundation specs to cut costs. When I explained his proposed materials wouldn't meet earthquake safety codes, he'd scoffed and called me paranoid. I refused to approve his changes. His smirk vanished. "You work for me now," he'd said, draping himself over my desk like he owned it. "My dad hired you, but I'm this company's future." I'd turned back to my work, ignoring his tantrum. That was my first mistake, not because I was wrong, but because I'd underestimated how far a resentful 19-year-old with daddy issues would go. Now, as I watched him flail at his father through the conference room glass, a cold dread slithered down my spine. Mr. Blackwood's shoulders sagged as he nodded slowly, casting me an apologetic glance. The office had gone silent. Keyboards frozen as employees watched the scene unfold. Ethan's voice pierced the soundproofing. "She undermined me in front of the team. Fire her today, or you'll regret it." The threat lingered like smoke from a sparking fire. This wasn't just about construction materials anymore. It was about control, respect. A boy who'd never heard no, and as Mr. Blackwood's resolve crumbled under his son's demands, I realized my 4 years of loyalty might not shield me from what was coming. Working for a family business means you're never just an employee. You're collateral in every feud, every unspoken grudge, every power struggle that should have been settled at home years ago. At Blackwood and Associates, that dysfunction had a name: Ethan Blackwood. I'd known about Ethan long before his internship. Mr. Blackwood, Seattle's most revered architect, spoke of his son with weary pride. "He's got big ideas," he'd say, then mutter, "Too big, maybe." What he didn't mention, Ethan's expulsions from 2 colleges for cheating, or how he'd blown his trust fund on failed startups. When Mr. Blackwood announced Ethan would learn the business this summer, I'd hoped it might humble him. Instead, his ego ballooned. Within days, he strutted through the office like he owned it, questioning decisions I'd earned the right to make. The Morrison Hotel was my project. Months of work seismic stability calculations, client meetings, every material choice justified for safety and budget. When Ethan pushed for cheaper foundations, I didn't refuse out of pride. I refused because lives were at stake. "You're overreacting," he'd sniff. "Buildings collapse from bad design, not materials." That single sentence exposed his ignorance, but when I tried to explain, he cut me off. "I don't need lectures from someone who's never run a business. My dad built this firm. You think for years here makes you an expert. The irony. Mr. Blackwood's reputation was built on the very caution I was defending. Ethan saw it as weakness. Now, through the glass, I watched him rant while his father stood silent. Was this the first time Mr. Blackwood truly saw his son for what he'd become? The call came 30 minutes after Ethan's meltdown. Claire, my office. Now, Mr. Blackwood's voice was flat, but defeat bled through after 4 years late nights, client trust. Award-winning projects it would all end because a teenager couldn't handle no. I took my time packing up, memorizing the blueprints, lining my walls, the waterfront condos that won sustainability awards, the community center that revived a neighborhood. The office tower featured in Architectural Digest. None of it mattered now. Dot at his door. I didn't sit. You're firing me. He met my eyes, his face etched with shame, not for me, but himself. I'm sorry. Ethan's family. He's 19. Here a month. I've given you 4 years. No, he whispered, but he's all I have left since my wife died. If I don't stand by him, I understood. This wasn't about me. It was a grieving father clinging to the hope that yielding might someday make Ethan worthy. But understanding didn't dull the betrayal. Before you finish, I said, steady, check your email. He frowned, but clicked open his inbox. His face drained of color as he read the subject line. Urgent safety violations and fraudulent docs, Morrison Hotel. Projectrum bling. As he opened my email, I watched his eyes widen with each damning line. Where did you get this? His voice was hoarse, barely audible. I started documenting everything. When Ethan arrived, I said, at first, I thought they were honest mistakes, wanted proof to help train him. Then I realized they weren't mistakes at all. What I'd uncovered began small. Ethan staying late had seemed promising. Maybe he was taking the job seriously. But when I'd caught him at my computer one morning, trying to access the Morrison files, his nervous laugh set off alarms. A check of the version history turned my blood to ice. Ethan had been altering safety reports, forging my digital signature. The cheap materials he'd pushed for, he'd already ordered them using falsified approvals. The Morrison client chose us for our safety record. I continued as Mr. Blackwood paled further. If that building collapses in an earthquake, I didn't need to finish. We both knew deaths, lawsuits, prison. But the Morrison project was just the start. Kickbacks from contractors, skimming budgets by inflating labor costs, selling our proprietary designs like the Hartwell Plaza blueprint stolen days before a rival firm submitted an identical bid. How much? Mr. Blackwood rasped. At least $200,000 stolen. But the real cost... I nodded at this screen. Those materials fail, and we're looking at wrongful death suits in the tens of millions. His hands shook. You sent this to others. The state board, the attorney general, the Morrisons' legal team, our insurers, too. They'll need to know about the liability. The door burst open. Ethan stormed in, smug. Dad, did you fire her yet? Or do I call grandfather's lawyers? He froze at the sight of his father's ashen face. What's going on? Mr. Blackwood turned the monitor. Explain these purchase orders with my forged signature, explain the substandard materials at the Morrison site. Ethan's face cycled through shock, fear, then defiance. She's lying. This is fake. Digital trails don't lie, I said. Every edit, every login, all times for a heartbeat. Pure hatred burned in his eyes. You've ruined yourself. My family owns this city. You think evidence matters. It will to the families in the Morrison Hotel when it collapses. I shot back. Reality hit him then. A 20-story death trap, not just lawsuits, manslaughter charges. You can't prove intent, he blustered. The email to Continental Contractors does, I said. The one where you took $10,000 to approve their toxic concrete. The one where you said your father would never notice. Mr. Blackwood jerked upright. Continental? Ethan, tell me you didn't. Continental had been blacklisted after their materials failed in 2 buildings, sparking a class action lawsuit. Dealing with them wasn't just greedy, it was criminal negligence. Ethan's bravado cracked. It wasn't supposed to matter. Inspectors wouldn't have caught it. By the time anything happened, we'd be standing over graves. Mr. Blackwood finished hollowly. My God. What have you done? The door opened again. HR's Janet stood there, flanked by 2 suits. Mr. Blackwood, these gentlemen are from the State Architecture Board. They'd like to discuss irregularities in your projects. Ethan's face went bone white. His father's imper and his own future had just walked out the door. The aftermath condensed for brevity. Federal investigators pored over servers, uncovering $800,000 in fraud across 7 projects. Pine Street, apartments, low-income housing was evacuated after inspectors found faulty foundations. Ethan pleaded guilty to fraud and reckless endangerment, 15 years in prison. His grandfather disowned him. Mr. Blackwood lost his license. His company renamed Seattle Structural Design, and his health, a heart attack within months. My fate. Offered Ethan's old job as project director, not for revenge, because someone had to ensure buildings wouldn't kill people. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't shouting back at those who try to destroy you. It's staying silent until the perfect moment to let their own actions speak louder than words ever could.